Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this TradeStation Masterclass. Today, we're going to talk about easy language and how to create simple studies for charting. We do a series of classes, one for charting, then we do indicators for radar screen, and I believe there's another one like creating a paint bar. But today, we're going to create an indicator, probably something that you've looked at before, and we're going to talk through this from the very beginning to the very end. How to get started with creating an indicator until you finish it. I'm not sure how much experience you guys have had with Easy Language, but if I'm going to describe some of the basics for those that are not familiar with it. Easy Language is TradeStation's proprietary programming language that allows you to create custom indicators, custom strategies, and also look at the ones that are supplied with the platform. It is very interesting to open up the code, for example, a simple moving average, and see how it's calculated and how it's constructed. It gives you ideas on how to modify the code to make the study work for you. You probably have thought of modifying the calculation of a study, and having access to the programming code allows you to do precisely that. Customize indicators so that they behave the way you want. Before we get started, the usual disclosures, just keep in mind that every symbol and idea that we talk about today is for educational purposes only. These are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also, active trading is not suitable for everyone, and past historical performance is no guarantee of future results. Anybody that's looking for additional details on these disclosures, go to tradestation.com/important dash information. All right, guys, let's talk through some of the steps. I'll probably move quickly through the PowerPoint slides. This session has been recorded multiple times, and we're just going to go through an exercise just to give you an opportunity to ask questions related to what we're talking about. And that way we can make the class interactive. First of all, some easy language elements. When you write easy language, you're going to see that words are going to be color coded to assist you in identifying the purpose of those words. Some of the words are going to be black, meaning that they don't have any particular meaning. Some of the words are going to be purple, meaning that they're going to be functions. Some of the words are going to be blue, meaning that they're reserved words. So a lot of times when you're typing easy language, the color is very helpful because you'll notice if you made a mistake. For example, if you're typing the long name of a function that already exists on the TradeStation platform and you type up the name, but it doesn't turn up purple, then you know you probably mistyped it or you have a typo because as soon as you type the name of the function correctly, it should automatically turn purple. That's what we talk about when it's syntax coloring. In easy language, we have a few types of words. We have reserved words, those are the ones that are blue. We have functions that are purple or magenta. And easy language does require the proper use of punctuation. When we write easy language, especially on these classes that I don't want to overcomplicate, there's a few punctuation marks that we use all the time. For example, semicolons are important because they act as separators between ideas. Once you finish a statement, you have to end that statement with a semicolon before you start the new idea. That's one of the ones we're going to use the most. Parentheses, of course, these are to provide some structure to parameters and also mathematical operations. If you want to control the order of operations in a mathematical formula, of course you can do that with parentheses. Comma to separate parameters, and quotations if you want to create a label or a text annotation on TradeStation, it comes in very handy. Square brackets are used mostly for historical references. We are going to take a look at that maybe in today's class, maybe not, but we'll see. Okay, so structure. This is just an example. We have almost every study and every strategy in TradeStation will follow this structure where you have inputs at the very top, you have variables right after, then you have the assignment of the variable, or meaning you're telling TradeStation what that average represents. And then you plot. And this is like the main structure. You're going to see inputs, variables, then you do the assignments, and then you do the plotting. Today, we're going to walk through an example to go through those different elements. To talk a little bit about inputs, inputs are windows into your study that allow you to customize parameters on the fly. What I mean by that is you may have, for example, a moving average, and you've set that moving average to 9 bars by default. But as you use a study, you may want to change the parameter to be a longer term or a shorter term. So that's the reason why inputs are created to give you that flexibility of adjusting the parameters in the front end without having to change the programming of the study. It also provides you flexibility of having one chart using one parameter and then another chart using a different parameter. Going back to our moving average, you may have a 10-bar moving average on one chart and a 30-bar moving average on the other. The only way you can accomplish that is by having these inputs that can be customized on the individual chart. Inputs have to be declared. So you see at the very bottom of this slide that there's an input word and a colon. That's the way that you declare inputs. And then everything after that is going to be your custom words. When you see the AVGLEN, that is a made up word. It means something to you since you're the one who's creating the easy language. For the person that created that, it was clever because if you look at that, that says the length or average length. And a lot of times when we create these type of inputs or variables, we want to use descriptive names so that when we come back to the code, we have an idea of what the thinking was. A lot of times if you do some default names, oh, this is input one, or this is first input, that doesn't really tell you what the input is for. So always think about using descriptive names as the one that's there, average length. And of course, inputs are going to be started off with a default amount. In this case, you can see that it's 20. And at the very end, the semicolon, we talked about it, that ends the statement. If you were writing some code that had multiple inputs, then the inputs have to be separated by commas. In this example that we see at the bottom, there's only one input, and that's why right after we declare the input, we put a semicolon at the very end. Variables are going to be temporary containers. And I say temporary because they are going to be recalculated as we write the study. And these are the main calculations that happen in your study. And they are going to store a value throughout. So these variables are important in your study. For example, look at the bottom. Variables, and it says AVG, and the variable is initialized based on its type. If it's a numeric variable, it's going to be initialized to a number. If it's a text variable, it's going to be initialized with quotations. If it's a true false variable, it's going to be initialized with the word true or the word false. So depending on the type of calculation that you're performing, whether it's a comparison that returns a true false, or if you have a mathematical formula that returns a number, then that is going to determine what type of variable you're going to be declaring. That's a variable declaration statement. Similar to the input declaration statement, there is a colon, and then you list all the variables that you're going to use in your code. Again, variables are going to be user defined. If you are programming EasyLanguage, you're going to start creating these words that EasyLanguage does not know what they are, but you are declaring them. So as soon as you declare them, they become part of the language and you can use them inside of that indicator. So to build studies, we have to go to the development environment. We have to select a study type because we have indicators and show me's and paint bars and strategies. And you have to think forward before you even create the study and try to visualize what the end result is going to look like so that you know what type of study you need to create from the very beginning. It is frustrating to start some code and realize that you are in the wrong type when you're almost finished with it. So always think about what is it the result that I want? Do I want some lines plotted on the chart? Do I want some orders generated? Do I want the candlestick to change color? So whatever the result is, that'll determine the type of document you're going to open. So we're going to give these documents a custom and descriptive name so that they are easy to find. A lot of times we use a prefix in our classes. For masterclass, we use an at and MC just to identify the indicators that we create in masterclass. And then we're going to write our code. Once we write the code, we verify to make sure that there's no issues following the instructions. That's something that the Easy Language development environment does. We fix any errors if it finds any. And if we make any edits, then we verify again. Then we go to the properties of the study. Properties are important because then you're going to have to tell the study what colors is it going to use, where is it going to plot, is it going to be on the candles, is it going to be on a separate subgraph. There's a lot of things that belong in the properties dialogue of a study. So you have to set those. And then once you're finished setting those, then you have to verify again. And then it's all a matter of applying that study to the chart just to make sure that it's working as you are expecting. All right, so that's our step-by-step process of creating an indicator. So let's go ahead and do that right here on my TradeStation. Let me go to apps and go to chart analysis. All right, so this is a chart of Apple. Let me change the time frame to daily. All right, and I'm going to disable account orders and positions just to clean out my chart. And I'm going to create a study. Let me go to apps and click on Easy Language. You can see how easy it is to get started creating studies. Okay, this is an indicator that was already opened. I'm just going to close it by clicking on the X on the top right. And when we were talking about type of study, click on this little drop down at the top left, and these are all the types of easy language documents that you can create. In today's class, we're going to start with an indicator. A lot of the indicators that we think about are probably things that are already created. So if you're wanting to have a moving average or an RSI or a MACD, those are already built into the platform and you don't have to recreate them. Although a lot of times, if I want to combine ideas, if I want to bring in the RSI value into a Bollinger Band concept, I look at the original documents and I grab snippets of code, copy and paste, and bring them over to my new custom code. And that's the whole idea of modifying easy language, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you just want to make some modifications and tweak already existing indicators so that they behave the way you want, I think there is still a lot of value in there. For this, let's just go do something simple at MC. Remember that for the naming, in my case, I use at MC for masterclass, but get into the habit of adding a prefix to your study so that they're all grouped together because they all start with the same prefix. And it makes it so much easier to find your studies. This is something simple. It's going to be the close. And I'm just doing something simple so you can see the sequence. Right over here where it says make available in the following windows, you can determine where the study exists. And this is more a list management feature because if this is a charting indicator, you probably don't want it to show up in the list of studies in radar screen. If it's not applicable to radar screen, why clutter the list? So if you need to hide the study from any of the applications, chart analysis, or radar screen because of the way that the study plots or displays, then do so because it'll keep your lists tidy. And for templates, we have some templates that you can start with, and it provides instructions on how to get started. For this class, I'm just going to say none. It'll be a blank document. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to do the following. Plot. I'm going to do something quick and then come back and modify it so you can see some of the things you can do. Plot one, by the way, TradeStation Easy Language can have up to 99 different plots. They're all numbered. Notice that I started with plot number one. There's no space in between. But once you write the word plot, notice that it comes up blue. We talked about reserved words. They have a particular meaning, and that word knows to go on the whatever application you choose, radar screen and or charting and plot the value that you tell it to plot or draw. If I put in the word close in parentheses, plot statements do require for you to put the parameter inside parentheses. If I just type in this command, the chart will know that on every candle, it has to plot the close. And there'll be an indicator that plots close to close, and it'll go across the candlesticks, just giving you a line across the closing prices. Interesting, right? But notice how the word close comes up in blue, so it knows the meaning. This is a reserved word, and all I'm going to do is add a semicolon at the very end. That's it. We created our first indicator. How cool is that? I'm going to verify this. Remember that the instruction says we have to verify. At the top toolbar, there is a button that says verify. You can also press the F3 function key on your keyboard, or you can right click and verify. Whichever one you find more comfortable, use that. I'm going to verify. This verifies. I disabled the pop-up that says it was successfully verified. There's a pop-up that shows up. If you don't like the pop-up, you can also disable it. But right here at the bottom, I see that there's 0 errors, 0 warnings. I'm going to add this indicator to the chart before I make any modifications so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to go to the chart, go to studies, add studies. Let me go up here where the at MC are. This is at MC, and this is the one we created, the close. And I'm just going to click OK. All right, we didn't change the parameters. We didn't customize the study. We didn't select the properties of the study. That's why the study selects default colors, default styles. You can see how the line goes right here at the bottom because that's the default. If you don't specify where the indicator goes, it'll go in a separate subgraph. If you don't specify the color, it'll be red. And if you don't specify the thickness or the style of the line, it'll just be a thin line. But notice that the value that I see here on the right-hand side, it is exactly the price of Apple right here on the top, because that's what we told it, just plot the close. If you wanted that line to run across the candlesticks, we have to go into the properties. So let me remove this study. I'm just going to click it and press delete. Go back to my development environment, and I'm going to right click and go to properties. This is how you set the style of the study, and we recommend you do this for every study because it'll look exactly how you want it to look. I'm going to go here to properties. The first thing I'm going to change is scaling. Remember that scaling, it's telling the indicator where it's going to draw. Is it going to be on top of the candles or is it going to be in a separate subgraph? You can see that the axis scale on is the right axis, but I can go here and say, put it on the same axis as the underlying data. This is like telling EasyLanguage, put it on top of the candles. That's pretty much what this is doing. And on the chart color, I'm going to make the plot here. I'll make it this bright blue. And on the chart style, I'll make the line thicker. And I don't know, make it a little transparent so you can see the candles through it. And then I'm just going to click OK. And once you change the properties, then you have to come back here and verify again so that the properties are applied to the study. Let me go back here to my TradeStation, go back to studies, add studies. This is the at MC, the close. Click OK and OK. And there it is. Let me open up the chart so you can see how this transparent line is going from close to close, just connecting the closing prices of the candles. Pretty straightforward, right? Now, of course, you can come here and say, let me double click here. No, this is the study. If you double click on the study and you go to inputs, there's no inputs because we didn't specify any. So let me cancel out of this and let me go back here into the EasyLanguage because now you can introduce other things. For example, if I go to here to inputs and say my price is going to be the close, notice that price comes up in black. So price is not a word that is reserved in the code. So I can use the word price as one of my inputs. And now if inside the plot statement, I can substitute the word price in here because it knows that price is the close. So this is like doing exactly the same. It's just organizing a little bit better. Not only organizing it, but giving me the flexibility of changing the price. Let me verify this. And then going back to my TradeStation, if I wanted to put that line on the close, now I can just double click on that line, come here to the inputs. Notice that now I have an input that says price, and I can say, put it on the low of the candles instead of the closing price. I'm going to click OK and notice how the line shifts to the close of every candle. Once you have that, you can make that any mathematical formula. You can say high plus low divided by 2. So this is like the midpoint of every candle. If I click OK, notice how the line shifts to that particular value, the midpoint of that candle. Pretty cool, huh? Now let's go ahead and create something a little bit more elaborate so that we can start introducing functions and comparison and true or false statements. Let me go here into, let me remove this. And let me pull up an intraday chart. I'm going to go to 5 minute chart. All right. So the idea here is to create a day range based on the highest high and the lowest low for a particular period of time. Let's say that you want to pretty much draw horizontal lines across the highest high and the lowest low, not for the whole day, but for the maybe the first hour of the day. You're gonna maybe your strategy is that the very first hour of the day is gonna set my movement, my range from the very high to the very low. And I'm gonna use that high and that low and project it into the future so that if those lines are broken, I can probably take a trading action. But I need to determine what is the highest high and the lowest low of that very first hour of the day so that I can plot those lines. That's the tricky part. When you think of an indicator and you want to translate that into easy language, that's the tricky part. Of course, there is a discussion forum that you can subscribe to so that you can post questions on Easy Language. And we have a dedicated team of Easy Language specialists that are posting and answering those questions and supporting our clients in creating these types of indicators. So again, let's go ahead and go to Easy Language and create that indicator for this example. I'm going to go here to the drop down and say, I'm creating a new indicator, and this is going to be at MC day range. This is day range. Let's do custom day range. That way we have flexibility. It's not just the day range because the day range is the highest high to the lowest low. This is custom based on time. This is only on charting, so I'm going to uncheck radar screen and I'm going to click OK. So I know from the plot statements, a lot of times when I think about indicators, I you don't necessarily have to start at the very beginning, is what I'm trying to say. You don't necessarily have to know your inputs from the get-go or your variables. A lot of times I start from what I know for a fact I'm going to need. In this indicator, I'm going to need two plot statements. Why two plot statements? Because I have two lines. I have the line for the high and the line for the low. Now, for the name, it's interesting because this is a calculated value. I'm going to have to use a variable, okay? And for the plot two, this is going to be range low. Just have to make sure that the name comes up in black. Notice that the word range comes up in purple. So by looking at the color, I know that's already a function. That's a color of functions. So if I don't want to use the range function, then I have to modify that name. Otherwise, Easy Language will think he's using range, so it must be the range of the day, not what I want. So this is the range high, which is the name that I want to use. So I know that those are the two names that I need to plot, but now I need to define what those two are, range high and range low. For the very beginning, on the very first bar, these are both going to be to the high and to the low. And think about this. As the session opens, on the very first bar, you're going to set the high and the low of that bar to that highest high and the lowest low. And that's going to be your values that you're probably going to project onto the future. Unless you modify or change the high and the low. Because depending on the time frame, let me go back here to the chart so I can show you something. This is a 5 minute chart. So here I have the very first bar of today. If you don't see the session breaks, you can change the color of them. Sometimes I go into the window settings and I go to session breaks and I make them a tad lighter so that I can see them better on the screen. I'm not sure if that's a little bit more visible, but you can see that's where the session begins. On the very first bar, on those candles, I usually make the wick a little bit thicker so that it stands out from the rest. I can go to the wick and make the weight a little bit thicker and then set it as a default. That way they're a little bit different than the other lines. They stand out a little bit more. But this is the very first candle. And if I were plotting my indicator, it would just grab the high at the top and the low at the bottom of that very first bar conceptually. Because first of all, we need to identify where those where is that first bar of the bar. So let me go back here to my code and I'm gonna declare my variables. Remember that I used a couple of words that are not in the code, so I need to declare them. Range high, and that will be numeric. Even though it's a word, high and low, remember that the high and the low is still a price, so it's numeric. So when I declare the variable, it's declared or initialized as the numeric variable. And I'm going to say range low. Okay, so I need to close some parentheses here, and I need to use a semicolon on each one of these because these are all separate ideas. Semicolon, semicolon, every one of those statements needs a semicolon at the very end. I'm going to leave my indicator for now like this to see what it looks like on the chart. I am going to go to properties. Well, before I go to properties, let me verify. So you have to verify first and then go to properties. On the chart, let's see, on the scaling, I want the indicator to be on top of the candles. Chart color, plot one is red, plot two is blue. Let's make plot one that cyan color, and plot two, let's make it that pink color. And the chart style, I'll make those thicker. One thing that I haven't done is notice that it says plot one and plot two because I didn't provide a custom name. You can provide custom names to your plots so that you can identify which one's which. On a one plot indicator, it may not be so crucial, but once you have indicators that have four or five different plots, knowing which plot number is which, then that's tricky. So if you wanted to do custom labels, you can do that. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to verify this. Before doing anything else to this indicator, let's see what it looks like on the chart. I'm going to go to Studies, Add Study. This is Add MC, Custom Day Range. There it is. As I expected, the top plot connects to the highs, and the bottom one connects the lows because we haven't done any differentiation between one bar or the other. On every bar, it plots the high and it plots the low. Now we're going to start creating conditions around this so that it only plots if the conditions are true. In this particular case, I don't want the high and the low to be reset on every single bar because as it is, every bar calculates and every bar, the high and the low are replaced. I want this to only happen once every day. There is a function in TradeStation. In fact, let me go here to the dictionary. And this is something that as you write EasyLanguage, you're going to want to know. Over here on the right, there's the dictionary that opens up EasyLanguage. Let me open up EasyLanguage. There we go. A lot of the other categories that you see here are for easy language oriented, object oriented easy language. The core easy language is part of this easy language.ell. That's how the language started. Everything else is part of the object oriented easy language. Or if I open up core easy language and I scroll down, you're going to have the user functions right here at the bottom. User functions are listed right here on the top right. I would recommend that you explore some of the things that are here. One of the functions that I want to use on this example is something that makes it very easy to identify the very beginning of the day. And it's this one right here. It's called session first bar time. The function automatically knows which one if the very first bar of the session. Okay, and what it returns is the time of the very first bar of the specified session. So if I do the following, and I'm going to use the session first time, if I do the following, if I do if time, notice how time is blue. Time is blue because it knows exactly what you mean. It's going to take a look at the time of the candlestick, not the time of your computer clock, not that. When you use the word time only, it looks at the time of the candle. If the time equals the session first bar time, take a look at my word. It turned out purple. If you type in something that doesn't turn purple, it didn't recognize the function, so you must have mistyped it. This is session first bar time, and the parameters of this are 1/1. A little bit complicated in terms of where the one and the one comes from, but if you want to know, this is looking at the sessions of the symbol. If I go over here to my TradeStation and I'm going to double click on the candle to go to edit symbol, and I'm going to go to properties, and notice how this section gives you the session of the symbol. I'm going to go here to the ellipsis to format. And what the 1, 1 means is that 1 refers to what type of session and is the regular session. If you're using a custom session, then it would be a different number. But the fact that it's using a 1 just means the regular session. And the other one, the one that is after the comma, refers to the session number 1 right here. So 1 for the type of session, 1 for the listing here, and it knows that this session opens at 9:30 to 4:30 p.m. So it makes a calculation based on the time frame, and it says, okay, if Apple is set to 5 minutes and the session begins at 9:30, the time on the first bar is 9:35. The function knows that. So when we go back here to my code and I say, if the time of the candle that you're looking at is the same as the session first bar time, then you have found the very first bar of the day. That's pretty cool, huh? So this is what we're going to do. If that happens, then begin. Uh-oh. Then begin. This is like a section type of syntax that allows you to do multiple actions. And the multiple actions that I want is to define range high, range high and range low to the high and to the low. That's all I need. And then I'm just going to end the sequence. Pretty cool, huh? Let me verify this. And this should have changed my indicator. Let me go ahead and take a look. Cancel. And there it is. Notice that it actually plots from the high and the low of that current bar all the way through. And it's doing that on every single day. I think that's pretty cool that we can do that type of modification to the study. One thing is happening at the very end of the day, it creates a diagonal because it has to connect one day to the next. It resets. That's the resetting point. If you don't like that diagonal, which I don't like, you can change the style of that study and say, instead of using lines, I'm going to use crosses. I'm going to use crosses for both lines. And I'm going to set it as a default. Notice that you can do that from the front end. When I say the front end, I'm using the platform, and then I'm going to click OK. So by using crosses, you get rid of that diagonal because it's not connecting the end of one day to the beginning of the next day. And visually, you can see the high and the low of that very first candle projected all the way through the end of the day. If you wanted to make additional modifications to this, we could. Let me see what time it is. Yeah, we have a few more minutes. Let's see if we can make more modifications. Since we were on TradeStation and we changed the defaults, we changed the style to a cross, remember? Right now it's just asking us, do you want to reload it with those new defaults? I'm going to say yes. So now the properties must be set to crosses automatically for you. In addition to finding the very first bar, I want to extend. Maybe I want to not only use the very first bar, but I want to use the very first hour of the day. I'm going to go here at the very top because if I think about the time, I want to have the flexibility of going to the platform and specifying the time that I want the indicator to use. So in my inputs declaration, I'm going to say end time. I know the beginning, the session first bar time function already takes care of finding the very first bar. What I want now is to tell the indicator, okay, when do you stop? And that's why I'm setting up an end time, which I'm going to default to 10:30. The market opens at 9:30. This is more for stocks, right? But if you're a futures trader, you can just modify this to your liking. I'm going to do the end time as 10:30 and do the following. If the time is less than or equal to end time, then begin. So now, yes, the first assignment happens on the very first bar. Now, what I'm looking to do is to replace that high and that low within this time frame if we get a higher high or a lower low. So we have to do conditions inside conditions. For the first condition is the time is still within the time that we're looking for. And then the other condition is if there's a new higher price. So if the high is greater than range high, then range high equals high. That's pretty cool. Now, yeah, we're within the time. We look at the high of the bar. If we're getting a higher high, then swap. The range high is now the high that I'm looking at right now. The other side of this is if the low is less than range low, then range low equals the new low. And that's it. Since we have a beginning right here at the top, we need to end this block with a word end. Just syntax. We begin and then we end. This is a full block and is actually looking for that resetting the range high and the range low. Let's verify this. Verifies successfully. Let me go back here to my chart and there we are. Now, take a look at what's happening right here. On the current day's activity, when I open up the study, of course, you see the crosses, but you can see how from the very beginning of the day, we have gotten new lower lows. And notice how the cross resets to that lower low. Right here this is this is the 1020 bar. The 1020 bar, that is the lowest low that Apple has traded at. And now the cross stays at that low across the chart. Now, it's not until this bar, the 1030 bar, where it stops resetting. And you'll see the crossovers. For example, on yesterday's trading activity, notice that the high and the low updated until this candle, which is 1030. And then from that point forward, then it just projects the line. That's why here on these crossovers, we didn't get a reset because it only resets on the very first hour of the day. Pretty cool. Oh, one thing that happens here is this weird zero plot at the very beginning. You can either load more history to get rid of that. There we go. We can see more of the history on the chart. Okay. So that's my study. And hopefully the example gives you clarity as to what is required to open and create these studies. The idea is for you to start thinking about what you can do going forward, not only in creating things that are unique, using what's already on the TradeStation platform and mix and match. You don't, as I said at the very beginning, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can use what is supplied to you so that you can make things behave the way you want. One thing that I wanted to point out is this Ask TradeStation AI feature is recently added to the TradeStation platform. TradeStation is moving forward with artificial intelligence, and we want to incorporate AI onto all our tools. This is our first release of AI into the TradeStation desktop. You do have to agree in it for its usage. If you click up here on FAQs, you see some of the questions that are being asked, but you can ask this AI anything about TradeStation and its functionality. I have tried looking for EasyLanguage, and I think it's connected, but this kind of searches all the help documentation in TradeStation. So if I do what is session first bar time, let me go ahead and see if it's able to pick up that definition from the documentation. I had done some basic easy language questions before and it was able to find documentation. Oh, here it is. It does provide you session first bar time. The definition is a TradeStation function that returns the time of the first bar for a specified trading session. It gives you the parameters. It gives you an example on how it's used. So it's great. Now you have the ability to ask the AI any questions related to your TradeStation platform, and is able to find it for you. If I say, what is the matrix, it should be able to find that information for you. So you don't have to go through the help documentation and find the documents yourself. You can just ask AI to find them for you. So let's see. The matrix just gives you a definition of what it is, some of the key sections, and the purpose. And it just tell you where to go to find the information on the matrix. I wish some of these were clickable. I guess that's going to be the next phase, but it's just a great way for you to get information on any topic. So I encourage everyone to use the Ask TradeStation AI feature. Guys and gals, thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to always talk about TradeStation. If you have any questions, we have a dedicated support team that you can call. If you are looking for any piece of education content, please email me at education@tradestation.com. That's our team email. So if I don't respond, usually other people in my team can respond as well. So education@tradestation.com. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful afternoon, and I hope to see you in one of our future classes. Check the events calendar. You'll find a lot of topics there. See you later. Bye bye.